The First Shogun's General, Part 4, Chapter 9, A History Lesson, Ryuki's Part, POV, Yoshitsune. The sun had just risen on a new day, as I lay sleeping with my still-asleep wife in my arms. After leaving the children, we went to our bed and just cuddled with each other until we both fell asleep. I felt a shift and looked at my wife's beautiful face, scrunching up as she opened her eyes, which locked with mine. "Good morning, darling," she said with a beautiful smile. "Good morning, honey." I responded with a soft smile. We should get up and let the children know we were just cuddling and nothing else, she said in a firm tone. I chuckled sheepishly. I truly hadn't meant to insinuate anything. It just came out that way. Seeing her firm face soften slightly, I leaned forward and kissed her gently on the lips. She did not resist as I pulled away from her and rose from the bed. I grabbed my okatana and watched as she rose from the bed and followed me towards the door, which, when we slid open, were met with a heart-warming sight. Michikatsu and Yushiro were asleep, with Yushiro leaning his head on Michikatsu's right shoulder. They fell asleep sitting up, not uncommon for demons, but for a demon to fall asleep in the presence of other demons means that the demons in question all trust one another. Turning my head, I saw my wife smiling a most beautiful smile at the sight that lay before us. "It is wonderful, but we have to wake them up, honey," I said. She pouted but sighed. "All right, dear." Hearing her permission, I quietly walked up to them and slightly released my demonic aura. I saw both of them tense but quickly relax as I laid a hand on each of them. "It's time to wake up," I told them, lacing my voice just slightly with my demonic aura. I watched as their eyes slowly fluttered open, and the usual blinking out the drowsiness. Father?" I heard Michikatsu say, "Why did you wake us up?" Hearing Yushiro say that, I responded, "Would you like to know what me and your mother actually did last night?" The two bolted awake and were blushing. "We just cuddled, you know. We also still had all our clothes on. There was nothing indecent happening." Seeing their blushing faces go blank slightly worried me. "Hey, are you two okay?" Asking this, I saw both tense before they both looked me in the eye and yelled together, "Don't insinuate stuff like that, Father." Hearing them yell brought me relief. "I didn't mean to insinuate anything. It was an accident." Telling them this, their faces lightened up slightly as I heard my wife giggle. "Well, you didn't help either. Or did you actually think I would do that after that conversation?" Saying this got my wife blushing tomato red and looking away from me. "Right, teasing time is over," I said with a no-nonsense tone, immediately catching everyone's attention. "I think it's time for a little history lesson." Seeing the children's curiosity and my wife's seriousness, I finished. "A history lesson about Ryuki, Muzan, and me. POV, Michikatsu." After hearing Father's words, I knew it would be something to pay close attention to, for I was curious. What was Muzan like before he met Yoriichi? What were his beliefs, his way of living? What was Ryuki's history as anyone who I asked simply stated, Ryuki is the strongest under Muzan-sama. Nothing about how Muzan found him at all, or even his age. There were guesses, as the oldest demon besides Ryuki and Muzan once said, "When I was just turned Ryuki, had already been a demon for over 2 centuries. And that demon was 226 years old at the time. Then, father's history, I already knew about his life as a human, but as a demon, practically nothing. I was excited to find out about this unheard piece of history." POV Yoshiro. A history of Ryuki, the Seirei Sohei, Muzan the Daimao, and Father the Mashogun. Each title was a reflection of who they were. Father once told me that Ryuki was the only other demon besides Muzan, who was older than him. Thinking this, I remember Father saying Ryuki was over 400 years old when he was killed. Muzan I couldn't care less about, as he was cruel to Mother, and no one is cruel to Mother. Father I was interested in. After all, he once said that, "Son, you may think that demons are strong right now, that they are much more organized with the Juni no Kizuki, but it's actually worse than it was back during the Sengoku era, so much worse." He never elaborated on it, and whenever I asked, he would deflect it by switching to a different topic. So I was interested in knowing what it was truly like back then. POV Yoshitsune. After seeing that I had their attention, I began, I will start in the order of who I mentioned first to who I mentioned last. Understood? Seeing their nods, I took a deep breath. Ryuki? Back then, no demon but Muzan knew his actual age. Everyone just knew that he was over 400 years old, and no further questions were asked. Unlike the others, I knew his true age, though. He was 478 years old, born in 974. A warrior monk turned into a demon by Muzan when he was 26 at midnight at the end of the year, and was a demon when the new year came. Pausing to let all that sink in and take in their reactions, I continued. He was special. He could see what he called the battle spirit of his opponents. It made him a deadly force to be reckoned with. But he could do something even more terrifying. He could make himself lose all intent of harming someone, yet could still kill them. Pausing, I heard a slight gasp come from Michikatsu and saw his shocked face. Yes, Yoriichi was not the first to do such a thing. I stated, as I let Michikatsu calm down before continuing. These were just his innate talents, though, not a kekijutsu, which was something else all on its own, and is the reason he was called the Seirei Sohei. He could conjure and manipulate the elements, even control the elements he didn't conjure. Finding the stunned looks on the two's faces, and a reminiscent one on my wife's, I continued on. Though this still wasn't enough to go toe-to-toe with Muzan. So he trained and trained, perfecting all of it, until one day his selfless state brought forth a new ability to see into the transparent world. I heard Michikatsu's breathing become faster and see his pupils dilate. Yes, Yoriichi did not discover the transparent world either. He was just born with it, unlike Ryuki, who spent over 100 years to finally achieve it, who then still spent another 100 years to use it at will and for it to be on constantly for an entire fight. Finishing, I saw my wife go over towards Michikatsu and embrace him while rubbing his back, calming him down enough, and staying there for me to continue. Ryuki was unbeatable and had a great sense of honor and moral codes he lived by, and when those were all slowly being trampled on, he walked away towards death, towards me, so that he would no longer watch as everything crumbles away. Finishing, I saw the faces everyone was making. Yushiro was interested and seemed to hold a hint of respect. Michikatsu was still shaken, but seemed awed by what I have said with much respect clear on his face. My wife looked to be once more reminiscing about the old days. What great times they were. Chapter 10. A History Lesson. Muzan's Part. POV Yoshitsune. Muzan. Saying this one name brought all attention back onto me. Was very different back then, as he loved fighting strong opponents, or, in rarer cases, fighting opponents who had the potential to be strong and cultivating that talent. Ryuki was one for both cases. Pausing so the children could comprehend, I restarted. Because of his human life, Muzan loved fighting, as he once described it. I feel truly alive. Sure, when I kill someone, I feel a pulse of life, but it's nothing compared to fighting. I feel my blood boil in excitement. When I meet those strong opponents, I feel a rush of exhilaration. I feel excitement and so much curiosity when I see new techniques or weapons used. He was truly battle-crazy back then. Hell, that's how I was turned into a demon. He saw me fight and saw potential in me. So after I committed seppuku, before I could fully die, he injected me with his blood so he could have someone else to fight against. Seeing the children's awe and shock, along with my wife's exasperated expression, I chuckled and continued. Muzan also didn't want the complete destruction of the demon slayers back then either. Now his children were showing such disbelief, it was honestly hilarious. Oh yes, you heard that right. He didn't want their destruction. In fact, he liked having them around as it meant more strong people to fight. Yeah, his reason was, once again, fighting. Watching their disbelief turn to deadpan was even more hilarious. I laughed for a good minute or two, joined by my wife. We calmed down, though, and I explained further. The kekijutsu he uses, his biokinesis, that is what made him a nightmare and a half to fight against, as he didn't just make more organs. No. He also used it to lay traps around the battlefield as if one of his limbs was cut off. He would sometimes let the limb not turn to ash, and either let it slink into the ground and control it to spring up on an unsuspecting opponent, or telekinetically control the limb to attack his opponent or opponents while he grew a new one to replace it. Watching Yushiro's look of grudging respect was a complete contrast to Michikatsu's absolute disbelief. He actually knows tactics? Hearing this, me and Tamayo-chan burst out laughing. Oh, he may have forgotten all of those tactics now, but back then, he was a genius at battle. Why only Ryuki and I could even operate on the same level as Muzan as sometimes. he would just randomly switch up his entire strategy in the middle of a battle. One moment, you think he's just going to keep hammering you with long-range whips. Then all of a sudden, there's a fist a millimeter away from hitting your face. Then you start getting pummeled in close combat. And there's nothing you can do about it except take it, or try to dodge everything. Watching Michikatsu's jaw drop was absolutely hilarious, seeing his eyes bugging out even more so. I waited so he could understand the earth-shattering revelation that Muzan knew tactics before continuing. He also didn't spend time doing experiments on his blood to find a cure to the sun. His thoughts back then on the matter were, "The blue spider lily turned me into a demon. I have everything else I need to replicate the full process except the blue spider lily. So I either get the blue spider lily and make the full cure, or just eat it raw." He wasn't all that concerned or obsessed back then as he is today about walking in the sun. "Yes," I said, walking, not conquering, as he didn't think that getting rid of his weakness counted as conquering the sun, just as no longer having said weakness. Seeing Michikatsu freeze and try to comprehend how Muzan, the one absolutely obsessed with conquering the sun, was once like, "Meh, it's not too important, I can wait." Yushiro, on the other hand, actually looked bored. I knew he had no interest in Muzan's history, but seriously? Even this doesn't make you interested? Seeing he was a lost cause, I looked towards Tamayo-chan, the one most affected by what I was saying. POV. Tamayo. Hearing this all over again was stressful. I already knew what Kibutsuji was once like. I already knew how carefree he once was. I already knew that the only reason he turned me into a demon was to help me, because he saw his past self in me. How when he watched as I devoured my family, he did nothing. How afterwards he treated me with slightly more contempt. How I thought it was because I always showed my displeasure with him. That I yelled at him, but never thinking that perhaps it was because of me devouring my family. I already knew the truth. I just didn't want to accept it. That Muzan didn't stop me because he wanted to see what path I would choose, bestiality or rationality. I chose the former, thus he always showed me contempt because of it. He never interfered so that I would live with the consequences of my actions. Understanding that while he didn't help me or my family at all, he did warn me, there is a chance you will lose your rationality, your sense of self, and become nothing more than a beast. Are you sure you want this? Even now my answer would be the same, yes. Because while I lost my old family, I later on gained a new one which wouldn't leave me alone forever, for they are the same as me. They are demons. In a way, Muzan made the right choice that night, while the me of then would never understand why it was the right choice. The me of now most certainly does, for he made the right choice in his future downfall. I exited my thoughts and turned towards my husband, as I knew that his story was coming up next.